¿Cómo
Hola,
estás?
¿cómo
Nada más vengo a
estás?
saludar. Bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien,
Qué bueno, bienvenido. Sigue, no te interrumpo, nada más te quería saludar.
mucho
Buenos
gusto en
días.
verte. yo. con esto? Sí.
Sí,
No me lo puedo tomar eso.
pero hay...
Creo que tú vas en el que sigue.
Ah, sí, sí, sí. Julia, Sí. Sí, sí.
¿Es su café?
Sí. Gracias.
Lo sé. Tu dijo.
Y entonces tú ya cada quien sabe cuándo. Ah, sorry. Ya cada quien sabe cuándo habla. Yo empiezo. Le doy la palabra y ella sabe que se la da Julia y sucesivamente.
Bueno, ella no sabe. Oye, Silvia, ¿y yo no hablo?
No, nosotros no.
Pues yo, ¿no?
No, invitados especiales. Oye, mañana...
Estamos un poco apretados. ¿Quieren que nos movamos un poquito para allá todos o cómo? Silvia. Bitte? ¿Listos? ¿Sí?
Sí.
Good morning. So we're going to begin with this welcome address. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to El Colegio de México. We're very happy to have you here. I would like, first of all, to welcome Dorothea Zvonek. She's secretary of the DFG, and to welcome all of our colleagues from the different German universities and institutions that are here with us. I would also like to welcome Julia Tagüeñas, Director of Scientific Development at the National Council of Science and Technology in Mexico, and Arturo Borja, Director of International Cooperation from the same council, and with whom we have a very close exchange, and we have met a lot recently, also in the past days. I would also like to welcome the friends from other Mexican institutions that are with us here, starting with Agustín Escobar, Director of CSS, and Manuel Perló, Director of the Institute on Social Sciences at the UNAM. And, well, of course, welcome all our colleagues from El Colegio de México, from different centers of studies, and especially the professors that are involved with the project Between Spaces. Carlos Alba from El Colegio México, and Marianne Brake, who are with us here today at this podium and who represent a larger group of professors that have consolidated this remarkable program between spaces. So in my brief remarks, I would like to start saying that I celebrate the meeting and I celebrate the reasons that are gathering here us today. I think it's an evidence of the strong relationship in the fields of humanities and social sciences with German institutions, built and strengthened across the dual year between Mexico and Germany. I think that we also need to celebrate that through this relationship with German institutions, we have also strengthened the collaboration and a permanent dialogue among academic institutions in Mexico, such as CIESAS and UNAM. And I think that also this meeting shows the interest that we have to continue expanding this collaboration. We have, sorry, the presence of scholars from many different universities in Mexico and Germany. And we also have the participation, very important, of the institutions in charge of the scientific policies at the national level, the DFG and CONACYT. And I think that is very important in terms of this process of strengthening and keeping up with this academic exchange. And in fact, we are also looking forward to further exchange. Sorry. I would like to briefly refer to the experiences that we have had, that we currently have at El Colegio in this academic exchange. We have professors who have graduated or participated in academic mobilities with German institutions. We have specialists and translators of classic and contemporary thinkers, German thinkers. In fact, as part of an initiative presented by the Center in Literary and Linguistic Studies, we are currently working and will be publishing at El Colegio the Spanish version of a book by Otmarete, Humboldt Undai Globalisation. And since 1988, we have had the William and Alexander Humboldt Chair with funds from the AID, which has allowed a scholar from Germany to have a longer stay at El Colegio México. For the past year and a half, almost 2 years, we have had the pleasure of having with us Ludger Pries, who has kept us working a lot. Sorry, not only at the Center of International Studies, where he's hosted, but he has been working with other centers on very different topics, and we are very glad to follow his initiative and push. In fact, today, along and at the same time with this meeting, we have another meeting organized with Ludger via the Humboldt Chair on shifting contexts and patterns of migration, comparing Europe and Central North America, where Ludger is participating, Agustin is participating, I'm participating, so we will be moving between the two events. In between. Yeah, we will be moving between spaces. And I think this has been a great collaboration with funds from the AID and other German actors. Mobility in migration has been at the center of the discussion in this, along all this year, not for good reasons, but it's there. And we're very happy to have this space to have this kind of exchange with the initiative of the Humboldt Chair. We also have other mobility agreements and memorandums of understanding with several German universities where students and professors at El Colegio have participated, just to mention some of them: Dusseldorf's Heinrich Heine, Cologne, Leipzig, Hamburg, Humboldt, Heidelberg, Rupert Karl, Berlin Free University, and one upcoming with Ludwig Maximilian. And finally, we have the International Research Training Group Between Spaces, where CIESAS on the Mexican side, CIESAS, UNAM, and Colmex participate. And on the German side, the Free University of Berlin, University of Humboldt, and Potsdam. And that works under the larger umbrella of globalization, has built a research network with 13 scholars in Mexico and 13 scholars in Germany, with the participation of doctoral students, and I'm very impressed because it's 70 doctoral students in 6 years, which means that they are really part of the project, and which started in 2008 and now is funded until 2018. I have been able, even before being president, I was able to attend and participate at some of the sessions of Between Spaces, so I know the project. I really think that it's an extraordinary model of collaboration, interdisciplinary, interinstitutional, solid collaboration. It has built a cohesive working group with common structure and continuous production, with common research and with a close link with educational project. I would like to say, for example, that some of the doctoral students that I've met that have participated in the project have earned awards in their dissertations after they graduate. So I think that's a very good sign of how they gain from this experience. And of course, it's a project that has a challenge now to overcome the end of the funding of the projects via DFG in 2018. And I think that we need to think how to continue with this initiative beyond 2018. And I think this is also a good moment to talk about that. And well, with that, I finish my address. Be more than welcome to El Colegio. And I'm really looking forward to the dialogue and potential new and renewed collaborations that will come up from this meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to visit El Colegio de México. In my years as a researcher, I had a lot of contact with colleagues like Gustavo Vega and some others working on international relations projects. So I'm happy to be here. The first time I heard about Entre Espacios was a few weeks after I had been appointed Director of International Cooperation at CONACYT. That was early 2013. At that time, I didn't really understand what Entre Espacios was about, but I have learned a lot about Entre Espacios, and now I can appreciate what it does and the relevance it has for cooperation between Germany and Mexico in the social sciences and the humanities. I believe Entre Espacios can be seen as a model of bilateral cooperation in many ways because it has moved professors, faculty, from Germany to Mexico and from Mexico to Germany, and that's an important fact because most of the times when we speak about international cooperation in science, technology, most of the times we're talking about Mexicans going abroad, but not really the same flow of people, of scientists from other countries to Mexico. The same goes for students. Entre Espacios has moved about 40 Mexican PhD students to Germany and about 40 German students to Mexico. So, and about 40 professors have also participated in this mobility. The other fact about Entre Espacios that I think makes it a very interesting project is that it involves different institutions, both Mexican and German institutions. Silvia already mentioned these institutions. So what Entre Espacios is doing from the point of view of CONACYT is building permanent relations in social science between the two countries. And these are relations that will become very important for cooperation, for future cooperation between the two countries. Because once you have a doctoral student from el Colegio de Mexico or from CIESAS spending 6 months or 1 year at one of the German universities participating in the program, it is obvious that once that student returns to Mexico, he or she brings with him relations with faculty, with students, that in the following years, in the next years, will be the base to develop new linkages, to broaden the linkages in social science between the two countries. So, well, I really congratulate the 6 institutions, Mexican and German institutions, that have developed this project. CONACYT has supported in 2 periods the project. The first one started in 2009. The second one started in 2013, 14. I remember well that there was an evaluation of the results in 2013 in Germany, and our representative, CONACYT's representative in Brussels, went to this evaluation, and it went very well. The results were very solid, and that's why we decided to go on with a second period of funding for the project. So I hope these relations continue as you, especially Mexicans, but also our German colleagues know well. We are experiencing difficult budgetary times in the federal government in Mexico. CONACYT is no exception. However, well, we will see how fiscal year 2018 finally comes, what it represents for CONACYT. And I guess we should also plan for another wait to repeat the evaluation we made in 2013. That would be important, I think. Well, I can offer now goodwill on the part of CONACYT for the future of the program. Thank you very much.
Professor Giorgoli, it is an Italian name? Or
It's Greek.
It's Greek. Yes, we discussed a little bit. So, yeah. Professor Boya, Professor Alba, Professor Craig, Professor Tagenia, Mr. Schon from the Federal State of Hessen, rectors and members of the Hessen universities, Mrs. Krause, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues on the podium, thank you first of all for this kind invitation to speak here today and to discuss at the famous El Colegio de Mexico, and for receiving our DFG delegation and our delegation from Hessen as well. It is really a great pleasure to be here and to see this important and really prestigious Mexican Institute for Social Sciences and the Humanities, and in addition to have the opportunity to personally greet the Mexican and the German coordinators and participants of this international research training group, Entre Espacios, a very good title for this really good cooperation. To note that in 2010, Mexico was really the the first partner country in Latin America to co-fund an international research training group. And much of the credit for this has to be given to our partner organization, CONACYT. Thank you for this, Mrs. Tagenia as well. Your organization has been really very open to joint funding, to discuss stronger cooperation, and I think we will really have good plans for the future. We discussed this today as well. So, CONACYT is providing generous complementary funding for all the years, without which the realization of this international research training group would not have been possible. Moreover, Mrs. Brake and Professor Alba, I'm very aware that the major credit goes to you as spokesman of this Entre Espacios. Well, before I continue with further thoughts on this special training group, please allow me to very briefly outline the history of the Research Training Groups program in general in Germany. You know that in Germany the method of doctoral training has traditionally been individual training, which focuses on one single project, specializing in one direction of research and with only one advisor. Although this method worked well in the past, and this day may be the preferred method by some, its limitations in an increasingly international research world started becoming apparent more than 3 decades ago. So in response, the German Research Foundation introduced a new funding instrument in 1990 called Research Training Groups, which to this day offer structured research and qualification programs for doctoral research at higher education institutions. By working within the larger context of the research training groups, doctoral researchers are enabled to broaden their knowledge beyond their individual research topic. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, mobility and cooperation across disciplinary and national borders alike are essential assets, even at the earliest stages of a successful career as a scientist. And from the very beginning, support for the international mobility has been one of the major characteristics of this program. However, it soon became obvious that systematic cooperation with partner universities abroad would offer many additional benefits. So in 1997, 20 years ago, the DFG established international research training groups as a variation within its existing funding line. These groups institutionalize the idea of a systematic international cooperation in research training on all levels. The 3 levels are: the partners commit themselves to set work on a joint research project, they jointly supervise the doctoral researchers and devise a common training program for all. Therefore, international research training groups truly promote internationality in research training far beyond merely fostering individual mobility, which of course is still indispensable. So at present, the DFG funds 210 graduate schools. International training groups make 25%, which is nearly 40. We have, in cooperation with 19 countries across the world, 3 of them in Latin America, and the number of long-distance partnerships in this program is really growing. So, coming back to Entre Espacios, Professor Alba and Professor Breik, it is clear that although you started in 2010 from an already existing and strong collaboration, it certainly was not an easy task to transform your common research interests into a viable and competitive research training group. Setting up this group like this one is a real challenge and requires strong dedication and long-lasting commitment to the idea of joint doctoral research training. So, in addition to your academic merits and your research plans, convinced the reviewers and the decision-making bodies of the DFG and the CONACYT in the evaluation, it was not easy, but it was successful to grant the funding for 2 phases with a total duration of 9 years. We believe that this commitment pays off not only in the form of the results that are about to be presented over the next few hours, and we are looking forward to this, but also in a way that goes beyond research output, namely in terms of contributing to the joint training of excellent researchers at a very early stage of their scientific careers. So, Entre Espacios was therefore a particularly very appropriate project for a first Mexican-German research training group. It follows questions of interboundary spaces in Mexico itself. It also exemplified the fact that globalization processes create not only new commercial and financial flows, but also new flows of knowledge. One can easily take the analogy one step further and describe the International Research Training Group itself as a being situated entre espacios, between the spaces of Latin America and Europe. So it becomes obvious then to follow your definition, which says that borders are not so much barriers as they are domains of intensified cultural exchange. Now, this is exactly what Entre Espacios will say to us. So with the launching of the Entre Espacios, a new page was turned, a highly effective cooperation in research between our 2 countries was built, a new period of larger, of coordinated research programs with longer funding periods was ushered in. So it is clear to see that a whole new chapter in our research relationship has arisen. However, it is not enough to be content with what we have. We have achieved a lot, but I wish all the members of the Entre Espacios the very best in your research endeavors. May all your expectations come true. And finally, let me say that I'm very much looking forward to the presentations and to the discussions that are followed below. I'm convinced that they will be inspiring for us as well and give new ideas for new cooperation to start in the next year. And well, I think it's up to us to thank the spokesman, the speakers. Thank you so much, Professor Alba, Professor Craig, for your engagement. Thank you.
I am happy to welcome the General Secretary of the Deutsches Forschungsgemeinschaft, Frau Dorothee Zvonek, the President of the Colegio de México, Doctora Silvia Iorguli, the Director General for European and International Affairs, Ingo Schön, the Director of International Cooperation of National Council of Science and Technology, CONACYT, Dr. Arturo Borja, the Deputy Director of Scientific Development of CONACYT, Dr. Julia Tagüeña, the Director of Institute of Social Research of the UNAM, Manuel Perló, the General Director of CIESAS, Dr. Agustín Escobar, my colleagues Teresa Carbó from CIESAS and Marianne Braig from Freie Universität Berlin, with whom I have the pleasure to present the International Research Training Group Entre Espacios. I would like to welcome directors of the universities of Hessen and all our other guests very warmly. I am also delighted to welcome our Mexican partners from CIESAS, el Colegio de México, the Freie Universität Berlin, and the UNAM. They represent the 20 professors participating in the international training program. And we would also like to welcome the students who represent more or less 80 Mexican young scholars funded by CONACYT and more or less 80 German scholarship holders funded by DFG, which until today participate in our program. My colleagues from CIESAS, el Colegio de México, Freie Universität, and the UNAM are happy to present our program to you, an innovative research project on globalization which considers globalization process from the perspective of Latin America. It is closely linked to the qualification program of our research training group, which offers students a compelling international and interdisciplinary doctoral education. As you will see, we have made great strides in the last 8 years and have been successful in developing our objectives. We are very proud of having received the support of CONACYT and DFG to continue our project during a second period and so completing the full 9 years. After briefly summarizing the program of our International Research Training Group, Between Spaces, we will then present our main achievements and our plans for the future. Our International Research Training Group is the result of a long academic collaboration supported by 3 German and 3 Mexican universities and research institutions: el Colegio de México, Institute of Latin American Studies of the Freie Universität Berlin, Institute of Romance Languages from the Universität Potsdam, Centro de Investigaciones y Estudios Superiores en Antropología Social, CIESAS, Institute of Romance Languages of the Humboldt Universität zu Berlin, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. This is the first program of its kind between academic institutions from Germany and Latin America funded by DFG and CONACYT. This program has a pioneering function not only for the academic involved, but also for the funding institutions. It brings together more or less 20 experts from different disciplines of the humanities and social sciences like political science, literary studies, economics, cultural anthropology, sociology, history, gender studies. Emphasis is placed on the empirical heterogeneity of observable process using, for example, microanalytical approaches for the understanding of everyday situations. We aim to develop a more refined methodology for the comprehension of globalization by combining a variety of disciplinary standpoints. Furthermore, we share a historical perspective focusing on 3 main phases of globalization: the colonial era, the late 19th and early 20th century, and the present. Our research program connects globalization and area studies research with the analysis of space. It contributes to globalization research by focusing on the movements among various regions of the world and the consequent emergence of new spaces, with Latin America and especially Mexico as its center. As social scientists and experts in humanities, we have contributed to decentering the current discourse on historical and contemporary globalization. The approach of our research program focuses on movements, the actors, and on the representations of emergent dynamic between spaces. It offers a new perspective that challenges conventional unilateral frameworks. Over the last years, we have developed our research project in a spirit of collaboration. The whole group has been engaged in exchange in interdisciplinary and interinstitutional colloquia in Mexico and in Berlin, Potsdam, in workshops, international conferences, and summer schools. We use the perspective within spaces as an analytical tool which serves to emphasize a specifically spatial mode of thinking about movements, actors, and representations in different historical periods of globalization. Moreover, it transcends predominant concept of fixed and stable spaces. We have divided our research program into 3 areas of analysis: the spaces of networks, spaces of local, spaces of representations. In spaces of networks, we looked at the global entanglements between the USA and Mexico, Latin America and Europe, and also Asia. We worked on migration process and intellectual networking, and have analyzed process of state and individual violence. In spaces of the local, we studied globalization process, or in other words, global influence on local communities. In the spaces of representation, we investigate the subject of symbolism, metaphor, and the media. We analyzed the spaces of literature, cinema, and photography, and we studied perception and performativity. I now give the floor to my colleague Teresa Carbó of Centro de Investigaciones y Estudios Superiores en Antropología Social. Thank you. Te pasas allá junto a ella.
Good morning. I would also like to warmly welcome everyone here on behalf of the Mexican side of this original collaboration. Since this is a binational program, it brings together distinct academic institutions and different traditions from Mexico and Germany. Our joint qualification program follows the Mexican model of a highly structured curriculum, combining it with elements of the German model of more independent research. It thus benefits from the best aspects of the 2 academic systems. Our qualification program combines training in a study program that promotes international mobility between the 2 locations. The program has established joint binational supervision and supervised field research. Visiting scholars are invited to mentor our doctoral students and to give lectures and special workshops. We offer funding for research at other institutions as well. And last but not least, we sponsor presentations and publications in a stimulating international context. We have developed new means for achieving these goals. In order to ensure continuous exchange among the professors and the doctoral students, both poles have created a permanent forum for discussion, the Interinstitutional Colloquium. The 2 programs Colegio in Mexico City and Berlin function regularly, thus allowing and requiring the permanent integration into the program of all the young researchers from each side of the collaboration. It has to be said that in this program, we are dealing not only with 2 different academic worlds, but also with 2 different funding modes. All the students from the Mexican side are funded by CONACYT for the duration of their studies. If they are selected into this program, they have access to a special scholarship, beca mixta in Spanish, by means of which they can spend from a month to a year in Berlin. The students in Germany get from DFG a 3-year scholarship, which includes a mobility bourse with which they can also spend up to a year in any of the 3 participant Mexican institutions. In both cases, the students take part in the respective ongoing inter-institutional colloquium, and they enjoy the full infrastructure of their academic hosts. I now give the floor to Marianne Breich from Freie Universität Berlin.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I think it's very clear what Teresa said, but we want to put a more life in this interespacios, and so we have prepared a little video for you. And Stephanie Brewster, you can. She's the director of this film, and Montserrat Algarabel is a producer of this film. And the video is in Spanish, more or less. There are some parts in English, but Montserrat will translate immediately all the very important parts. And the two are from the first generation of the Interespacios. Stephanie came from UNAM. She studied philosophy and cine and film. And Montserrat came from Ciesas, studied anthropology, and did her postdoctoral thesis here in el Colegio de México. So you see, yo me voy a quedar aquí para tener el control del asunto. Bueno, the two have produced a film. It's very long, 2 hours or something like this, but we tried to had a very, very short version of 5 minutes, por favor.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. As Marianne said, I am Montserrat Algarabel and my colleague Stephanie Brewster. We're here to present some very brief version of a long project, because we have been working for 2 years now, 2 years and 2 months, in this documentary film that tries to give a little sense of what Interespacios is, or Zwischenräumen, as I can say it in German. In this film, what we do is that we follow 5 doctoral students, 4 of which are in Berlin, and 1 of which is in Mexico. I am speaking in the present tense because every film, documentary film, is about the present. But these students have already worked on their projects, and they have already, some of them finished their doctoral dissertations, because they were all members of Interespacios. And in this film, what we try to do, as I was telling you, is showing the experience. What is it like to go from your native land into another space that means a different language, that means different culture, etc. So as you can see in this teaser, which lasts 12 minutes, it tells a little bit about their anxieties, and most importantly, their hopes, their projects, and the way in which any creative process that they embark in has to do with developing their research. Because we believe quite strongly that research is highly creative. It is an enterprise that it is not only behind a desk or inside a library, but it also has to do with connecting to people, with finding strategies in order to fight writer's block. So we follow these 5 students, as I was telling you. 4 of them were in Berlin. Carlos Perez, who was working on a PhD dissertation, he already finished, about the exchange between police agencies, both in Mexico and in in the United States. There you have him, Carlos Perez. And then we follow Laura Peito, whose research had to do with post-migrant theater in Berlin. She herself embodies Interespacios. She herself is half Colombian, half German. She works with these second and third generation migrants, mainly Turks and Kurds, who live in Berlin and who work in this very interesting theater plays that have to do with gender, with migration, with body image, with power, with sex. That's Laura Peito. We follow her also with her tutor, that is Sergio Costa. And then we have Jacqueline, whose doctor's degree was in anthropology from CIESAS, and she stayed as part of this exchange program in Berlin for some months, in Berlin. And she's working on how civil society organizes itself in order to look for forcibly disappeared people. So there we have Jackie presenting at the LIE in Berlin. And she is, as I told you, a student from CIESAS. And we also have, who comes next? There she is, with Dr. Alberto Assis, who was Jackie's tutor. Kenya Herrera is another of our characters. I mean, she's a real person, flesh and blood, but in our documentary film, we obviously try to make them into examples of what it is like to be member of this exchange program. So Kenya's research is about the buchonas, who are like these women who are involved in drug trafficking and in these very shady and dangerous networks of drug trafficking. There she is with Marianne. And our last character, or the last person that we follow, is Saranda Fromold, who is currently writing her PhD. There you have Saranda. She stayed in Mexico, being a German exchange student, for some time doing research on the Basque exile in Mexico. So she visited the Archivo del Senado, there you have it, and she worked here in Colmex also. So what we attempt to do with this documentary film, which, as Marianne say, is like an hour and 20 minutes long or so, is to delve into the human process also. Not only, we believe, international relations between institutions and between countries are very important. But at the same time, they are a complex form of cultural exchange. And that is what this documentary film attempts at showing. In this documentary film, we also have a story of Interespacios. When was it born? Who are the forces behind Interespacios? How many students have gone and come, etc. We also have images, as you can see, of the main institutions that are involved in this exchange, and we also have images of everyday life, because these researchers or these young scholars also are involved in different kinds of activities. Some of them are activists, some of them teach, some of them have hobbies, etc. So we wanted to present like the whole picture of what Interespacios is. There we have Laura with some final words. She's saying, I don't know if I am going to fill the rooms and everybody wants to get to know my topic, post-migrant theater in Berlin, but I want to do it. This is also a film about curiosity, about intellectual preoccupations and how they are organized and how they are presented in the form of a doctoral dissertation. So as I was telling you, we have been working on this film for 2 years, 2 months. We filmed in Berlin thanks to the support, mainly because Marianne and the LIE, the Latin American Institute of the Freie Universität was instrumental in order to get this going. And then we received another little, because you know, the monies and budgets for filmmaking are staggering. We received a little grant from the Goethe Institute Mexico, which has allowed us to finish our editing, but we already have it done. Oh, no, thank you. And I wanted to invite everyone to our presentation. We will be the world premiere of Entre Espacios, the documentary film, will be held at the Goethe Institute. We still don't have a date. It's going to be around June 19, June 20, and then we will be showing it hopefully at the LIE for the summer school this year. Well, thank you for taking a peek. This was more like a sneak peek of our documentary, and I hope that you can also get to see the whole film.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And let me mention an anecdote. When we began with this program, there was a lot of doubts on the Mexican sides of the Mexican tutors. They was really afraid what will do their students, very protected, very organized, very in a structural program in Berlin, with these Germans who have only a colloquium and some workshops and sorry. So there was really a very strange situation. But, and then in this first moment, we had a visit from CONACYT, and there was a discussion with a president from CONACYT, with Gabriel, and he asked the students, and you are finishing your thesis here? And why are you finishing your thesis? It's Berlin, so interesting. And they told them, and I think it's a very important point we didn't thought about, that the Mexican students had a lot of obligations, not only in the programs here, but also in their daily life. And being in Berlin, the only obligation was to go to the colloquium and in the library. And it's really, the library is the place they met them, the Mexican and the Germans. I think it's one of the secrets of the success of our program. Thank you so much. Okay, I now give the floor back to Teresa Carbon, because now we will mention you some data about our achievements.
Yeah, it's sweet.
I hope we can return to the PowerPoint. We are not so technical. Specialized. Bueno, sí. Perfecto.
It's nice to be able to present achievements.
A ver si se puede.
And then, oh, well,
Lucy,
the slide.
What's the problem? Okay.
Yeah. Gracias. Gracias, chicas. This table presents the outcomes that we have achieved in the 3 periods funded by DFG and CONACYT between 2009 and hopefully 2018. Not out from vanity, but from hard work and good cooperation, I must say that we are really happy with the fact that the whole first generation and an important part of the second have finished and defended their thesis, and the rest of the second generation will conclude in the next months. The research of our doctoral students is at the heart of Entre Espacios. Their projects are consistent with the key elements of our program: high mobility on both sides of it, a strong networking and exchange component, and the integration of young scholars from each country. One of our important achievements has been a series of book publications and theme-based editions and articles in internationally recognized scientific journals. We have also been present with joint panels at international conferences, for instance, at several conferences of the Latin American Studies Association, LASA. We have also organized the conference of the largest international organization of Latin American historians, AILA, which has been held in 2014 at the Freie Universität Berlin. Its theme has coincided with our own, which was Between Spaces, Latin American History in a Global Context. These conferences gave us the opportunity to present our research agenda in a highly visible way on a large international scale. And we have also had a nice population growth with 27 children from scholarship holders, both in Germany and Mexico combined, because both CONACYT and DFG support this family policy.
But it was a little bit strange for DFG, so much children.
It was a sort of a peak. And we have also had an abundant harvest of prizes, as you can see. Quite a bit, huh? Well, and now I give the floor back to Marianne Braig.
Okay, besides this results that Teresa has mentioned, I want to emphasize some side effects for all of us. As the first international research training group in Latin America, funded by DFG and CONACYT, all involved in institutions, the universities, the funding agencies. Here, the president of DFG visited us, and here the ministry also visited us here in Mexico. So the involved institutions, universities, funding agencies, ministries, academic institutions outside university. You saw the students going to the Ibero-American Institute in Berlin, the largest, major library related to Latin America in Europe, and the Museum of Anthropology. So there are a lot of institutions involved in this process, and I think all of us, we have learned a lot. And I think the most important, all of us, we have changed our attitudes in the last decades. The scientific community and academic landscape in Mexico is now well known and recognized. Before 10, 15 years ago, it was for the agents for the DFG, it was not so clear what is el Colegio de México. And Mexico is very, very dangerous, very risky, perhaps not so useful to have an interchange. So I think this had changed a lot. So the involved universities in Berlin, Potsdam, but also in Mexico City, has established services to support this kind of programs. This is very, very, very important because you have to support a long-term international program, not only a short-term. And you know the DFG only can finance 9 years. So we have to be clear, and that was a discussion with our institutions, that we had some years more, because we will ask for a new program, sure. But we have to organize the third generation. And so Free University only, for example, is giving us the support for 5 years after the fundings of DFG to have an academic coordinator. They always funded a very small instrument. It's Luciano. Luciano is funded by Free University, and I think it's the 10th of this doctoral students who worked in the international relation. And so some other very important points, also Colegio de México. He invited us here now. There's a support from the Mexican institutions. I think that it's very important to recognize this. Because of the engagement of the involved professors and the institution, we also will continue with the program, you saw, with the colloquium and with the workshops. The problem in Germany are the scholarships. Perhaps this seems little, but this kind of academic effort is needed to continue this kind of programs. We need drive and a long brief. It's very important to have this in mind. It's not a thing for 9 years. That's really, it's need time. Okay, so for me, one of the most important results is that all professors and all institutions, and you can ask them, want to have a new research, training research program. And we are working on this, I will mention it. So this is a very important point. And I think the strength of the academic field lies in the imagination and the creativity of the people who are doing this kinds of academic work and scientific. And it's innovative ideas, important questions, well-funded theoretical concepts, but a lot of curiosity that is necessary to do this kind of things. So we are looking to the future, and I'm really very happy that Hans-Jürgen Burkhardt is here, because one of the very important funding lines is the ministry, and they are funding now 2 new international research centers, Merian Center. One is in Guadalajara and Bielefeld in Kassel, and Hans-Jürgen Burkhardt is here, and the other is, you can see here, is in Sao Paulo, related to Argentina and to Mexico, to Colmex and to Berlin and to Köln and the Ibero-American Institute. So the title of this is Conviviality in Unequal Societies, Perspective from Latin America, because we are thinking that inequality is one of the entry points to understand Latin America. Another project we are dealing with, and we have finished a preliminary application that is now in DFG, has a nice title, Temporalities of Future in Latin America, Dynamics and Aspirations of Anticipation. So we thought perhaps in between spaces, it would be very interesting to think about in between times. So there's nowadays a very important discussion in Germany, in Europe, about the future and about the end of the Western world. And we thought, but we have to ask this question more broader, and to include the other parts of the world, other regions. And so we decided to develop a new application with the focus on future and asking for protagonists of future, for the projections made into the future, and the processes who are linking the past and the future. But also we try to go much beyond, because sorry, I'm really speaking in between Spanish and English. It's Spanglish. Okay, because the link between the future and the past and the present is not so easy as we are thinking about. So I'm, and not only I'm, all of us, we are really deeply confident that we have important questions, a lot of curiosity, a solid experiences how to prepare young scientists for the future. Thank you very much for your attention. We will now start with a brief presentation of 2 doctoral students. One is Cindy McCullen from CSS, Occidente, and Rafael Mondragan from UNAM. I'm really happy. The 2 are scholarships from CONACYT, and they had a beca mixta to stay some 6 months in Berlin. Okay.
Well, good morning, and I would like to thank the organizers of Entre Espacios for the opportunity to really briefly share a little bit of what was my experience and the benefits of participating in the International Research Training Group. I participated in 2015 and 2016, which was during the 3rd and 4th years of my PhD studies at CSS Occidente in Guadalajara. And I would just like to mention a few of the benefits and opportunities that this participation afforded me. Firstly, the opportunity to participate in the interdisciplinary colloquia, both in Mexico and in Germany. When I had the opportunity to participate in these colloquia, I was able to receive feedback and critique from both students and professors from a diversity of disciplinary perspectives based on the expertise of the different participants. So all the projects, my own included, and the different projects that were presented and discussed were able to benefit from the insights of historians, economists, sociologists, professors of political science, cultural studies, anthropologists, etc. And in my particular case, and I believe the other students had that same opportunity, one was able to receive feedback from experts in our own fields, in my case, in socio-environmental conflicts and on environmental regulation, that wouldn't have been the case without this program. I was able to spend 4 months in Berlin, and in addition to the opportunity to participate in these colloquia, I was able to generate some points of contrast for my research. My thesis, which I finished this year, was entitled Sewer of Progress, Industry and the State in the Pollution of the Santiago River in Jalisco. So while in Berlin, I was able to interview experts from the German Environment Agency, UBA, as well as speak to representatives from Friends of the Earth Germany, BUND. And in that case, I was able to understand what is the legal framework for pollution control in Germany, how does wastewater discharge control work, and what are the current concerns for river cleanup and aquatic ecosystem protection at present. And so this allowed for me to, with these points of contrast, incorporate a more international perspective into my research. Also, more broadly, while I was in Berlin, I was able to take a step back from my focus that I had while here in Mexico, which was very centered on my empirical work on the local conflict, the local actors, local implications, and through discussions in the colloquia, as well as with several water researchers in Berlin, to zoom out and think about the implications of my work, the analytical and contextual implications of the work in a much more productive way. This led to a significant shift in the way I was able to frame my work and to more fruitfully engage in theoretical and analytical discussions around political ecology, the neoliberalization of nature, and critiques of free market environmentalism. So this participation offered a wide range of benefits to myself, and mainly in terms of the ability or an opportunity to dialogue and receive feedback from experts in my area, both in Mexico and in Berlin. I was told I could speak really briefly. I don't want to take up too much time just on my actual research, so I'll be very brief and just say that in my thesis, which was focused, as I said, on a socio-environmental conflict around the industrial pollution of the Santiago River in Jalisco, in an industrial corridor where there are over 600 large, medium, and small-sized manufacturing companies, I tried to understand what are the logics that allow this industrial pollution to persist despite social conflict and the demand for river cleanup. And I tried to understand this in terms of what I called institutionalized corruption and a myth of the multinational. The institutionalized corruption is not about the illicit enrichment of individual actors, but it is about a system that prioritizes private interests over the public good and environmental protection, and which is made up by lax regulation, extremely low levels of inspection, a dependence on self-monitoring and self-regulation, and the empowerment of private actors even in the setting of environmental standards. Another key component for understanding this problem was the myth of the multinational, whereby the idea or the figure of the large corporation, particularly the transnational corporation, which, according to this idea, complies with strict international certifications and regulations, even when they are operating in Mexico. This idea, although it does not have an empirical basis, justifies a system that is based on self-regulation, self-monitoring, and standard setting by consensus. And so, in conclusion, I felt that this myth justified the empowerment of the private sector in environmental regulation and diverted attention from the larger corporation when trying to deal with pollution issues, focusing only on small or clandestine operations as well as municipal sources of pollution. And in general terms, it was not an issue, it is not an issue that results from a lack of financial resources or adequate technology, but rather the political and economic decisions to have this region integrate into the national and global economy based on a certain economic strategy, which devalues the environment, in this case of the river, and of the lives of the poor and relatively poor people who live in this peri-urban region along the river. And thank you once again for the opportunity to share my experience.
Good morning to you all. I'm going to read because I get nervous when I'm on these kind of spaces. As you all well know, the International Research Training Group Between Spaces, Entre Espacios, is a pioneering project that aims to create a dialogue between humanities, social sciences, and cultural sciences. This dialogue is grounded on a deep reflection on transcultural, translocal, and transregional interactions uniting our planet since the 16th century and lasting until today. The research developed within this project represents a step forward beyond the regional studies tradition. The project is a challenge for those who wish to develop pertinent, complex, and profound knowledge on societies from Latin America and our world. I also was part of Between Spaces, first generations. As a doctoral student, I presented a project on Latin American anarchism. I reconstructed some forms of intellectual sociability that allowed the development of an intellectual tradition of enormous vitality. This tradition couldn't be understood in national terms. For them, migration, dialogue, and voyages were fundamental. That project was related to my PhD dissertation on Latin American essayist Francisco Bilbao and to my research on the intellectual groundings of the artisanal movement in Chile, on Latin American debates on direct democracy and radical citizenship, and on the very foundations of the name and the idea of Latin America. As it happens when one conducts research, when I started participating on Between Spaces, I had little certainties and a lot of questions. The academic space built by Between Spaces helped me to construct deeper research questions. I started a productive dialogue with people that didn't belong to my discipline, nor limited their interests to a unique regional or temporal space. All of here may know that in too many occasions, doctoral research projects do not reflect the complexity of their objects of study, but rather are more committed to disciplinary boundaries created by universities and research centers. For instance, in many graduate programs, literature scholars learn to dialogue with other literary scholars, but not necessarily to think about a complex reality that surrounds and informs that literature. It is very common that these projects inherit the prejudice of the institutional and disciplinary fields in which they are presented. For those reasons, I think that interdisciplinary training is fundamental. In my case, Between Spaces helped me to go beyond the typical questions that are asked in my discipline and allowed me to come closer to the PhD dissertation I hope to research. Traveling to Germany with the support of Between Spaces allowed me to have access to that extraordinary documental archives housed in Berlin's Iberoamericanisches Institute Library, one of the most important libraries to those researching Latin American history and culture today. I worked on my doctoral dissertation on that library, and I also developed there some research projects that I am still working on today. Traveling to Germany allowed me to develop intellectual and human networks that went beyond my doctoral training. Today, the people on those networks still enrich my job and my personal life. In that library, and thanks to those networks, I made the fundamental discovery of my PhD dissertation, the existence of an intellectual network in Europe's periphery that allowed me to relate discussions of radical, utopian, and libertarian Latin American thought with other discussions happening at the same time in Poland, Romania, and other regions similar to ours. The discovery of planetary South-South networks connecting intellectuals from both sides of the Atlantic allowed me to understand in a different way the history of utopian thought in the Latin American region. That discovery was fundamental for the work I'm conducting today. It has allowed me to think in a different light the history of the literatures in Mexico in a project funded by Mexico's National Autonomous University, in which I take part as a member of the coordinating team. It has allowed me to think differently the history of the 20th century Latin American literary hermeneutics, which is the topic of my last book and the result of a 3-year research project at Mexico's National Institute for Philological Research. It has been fundamental in my later studies on other Latin American utopian and radical thinkers, many of them travelers and exiles. They generate us with a comprehensive vision on citizenship and a generous conception of the intellectual functions that allows us to imagine a hopeful future for our region. For all those reasons, I wish that future generations will have their own opportunity to participate on a project that is similar to Between Spaces. I also wish luck to all the professors and students that took part in this project. Thank you very much.
Now we have some minutes for general questions about Entre Espacios and the German-Mexican cooperation. I would like to invite my colleagues from the SIG, Luz Helena, Marisa, Belaustegui-Goitia, Bern, Hausberger, Ilan Bisber, Alberto Assis, Jean-François Proudhon, Ricardo Pérez Monfort, to come here to participate in this session, if you want.
Teresa, tú también. Teresa,
Sí, ya está invitada.
Teresa, tú también.
Sí, levanten todos.
Bueno. Questions? So, one moment, please.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentations and insight into those 8 years of joint work between many interesting institutions. It's really interesting to see what you accomplished over those past 8 years. You mentioned that the first cohort of...
A moment. Hola, sitting there is a chair. ¿Todos están aquí? ¿Sí? Ya, entonces ya, Carlos. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Regarding the timeline, the first cohort of doctoral candidates must have finalized their doctoral programs, PhDs, some 5 years ago. Now, I am wondering, in which positions are those doctoral candidates now working? I'm sure you cannot now go into detail regarding every candidate, but it would be very interesting to have some case examples of now present positions of your doctoral graduates.
Okay, I can ask for the German part and... one of you for the Mexican? Okay, and the German part, there are different fields. The first is an international field. It's we have 2 or 3, I think. We are now working in the Secretary of International Relations. We have some of them in the international cooperation, GITS and BMZ and all this kind of agencies. This is a very, very important field. We have also some of the literature and culture in the international cultural field as managing cultural projects, and we have some are now junior professors. One of our literature doctoral students, Berit Carlsen, she is now in Osnabrück junior professor. So it's also a lot of them are in academia, but we have really the majority is not at universities, but on a very important level in international institutions. Some of the Mexican part. Aquí está el micro.
Well, basically, it's the same profile that what we have in Germany, and I would say that it's not very different from the graduate from our programs here in Mexico usually do. So they work into the academic life. Some of them are researchers, some of them are professors, some of them work for NGOs, other ones work for public agencies. I think that Marianne already mentioned the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Germany, so it's the same thing here. And I guess that, well, because most of them come from social sciences and humanities, I would say that I think that none of them work in the private sector. Maybe it's something that we would have to, I don't know, to correct in the future, but basically this is what our graduate students do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think that the category of zwischen, in between, entre, marks and has an effect in the labor scene. So we have students working on collectives. Mexico has a strong, a very difficult problem in disappearance, and they need the academic thought, they need the intervention, they need activism, and they need the notion of space also. So if you saw the different accents on themes and the different accents on regions and on disciplines. So Latin America is in strong problems, and they need in-between thinkers. So we deliver that. We deliver the category of in-between, and I think we deliver that strongly and efficiently.
Okay. Next question, someone had? Por favor. Perhaps you can present yourself.
All right, my name is Brigitte Harf. I'm Vice President for Internationalization at Goethe University Frankfurt. And I have 2 questions. Number 1, from my own experience as a director of a Graduiertenkolleg, I'm wondering about the balance. I see here that there are a number of Mexican universities that participate in this graduate program, and I'm wondering how well balanced the distribution of doctoral students is across the universities, because as I know it, it's always a factor for success that there is a certain balance of doctoral students across the faculty that contributes tremendously to the stronghold that such a program has in the respective institution. Same question applies to the German side, of course. And my second question is about alternative ways of Latin American cooperations. Apart from Graduiertenkollegs, I'm wondering this format of Forscherkolleggruppen. To my mind, this is in Frankfurt, we have this highly successful Forscherkolleggruppe, and I hear from my colleague Rainer Forst that this format is very interesting, is very attractive, but not as much as often used as one would expect. And I could imagine that it would be great to have, because you have a number of researchers, and that could very well be researchers from Latin America and from Germany working on a similar topic that sort of bundles together expertises from these respective countries. Anybody?
Yeah, I can begin if you want. And yeah. Soll ich anfangen? Okay. Okay. First, I think we have a very clear contribution. Because only we accept the best of the applications, and if I see right, in El Colegio there are more or less 10. And you will explain the Mexican part. In the German part, we are discussing between Free University, Humboldt University, and Potsdam. But Humboldt and Potsdam only enter with one discipline. Language, literature. So that is the idea in Germany is more the distribution between the disciplines. And not between the institutions, and there was no problem in Germany for this. It was very clear that the others enter with only with this discipline. And the second question, we're doing this now. we are in a competition in a funding line, little Forschergruppen, and one is with the Colegio de Mexico and the Latin American Institute about migration. It's a younger professor. She also was in the first generation of postdoctoral, Stephanie Schütze, and Ludger Bries, you know him here. They too had with Mexican colleagues are in this kind of project. Okay, so as an expert, okay.
As we mentioned, the instrument of the colleague. This is a totally different issue. So it's concentrated on one university. Normally there are, they concentrate not on the training of the doctorates, but so it's to intensify one theme, one issue in a very freely work style, but normally at one place. So it's but it's not the right instrument to have it in an international scene. The normal Forschergruppe is a different instrument. So
exactly. And
they
this
are
we are
planning.
going to this.
They are
exactly.
planning this one. So.
Ricardo, we've had some experience in the disciplinary experience with Forschergruppen. The historians that belong to Entre Espacios, we have met several times to think about one theme or one topic, and especially globalization. And we've had some reunions in Berlin and in Mexico, in Guadalajara, and there are, I think, 2 books we've been working on, and I don't think if it's the same thing as the Forscher Kolleggruppen, but it matches the idea. We all take one topic and we try to study it with the different areas of history. So I don't know if that's
I don't know if I understood, but I want to comment on 2 different thematics. One around a thinker, which is Gloria Anzaldúa, is an activist, a thinker, and a poet, and does also thinking in juridical concepts. So with the Lai and Ingrid Simpson, she has been pushing Gloria Anzaldúa and her relation with the figure of Antigone from Europe, and we have been thinking on Antigone from the South and the figure of Gloria Anzaldúa, and we've been working together in Congress and working together in papers and working together in LASA around thinking authors, and Antigone working. Antigone is the name, Antigona, traveling to the south.
Okay. Perhaps one can answer the question. Okay.
say too few things in order to answer your first question. First thing, I think that one of the reasons of the success of this endeavor has to do with the fact that we managed to get together, various networks of researchers. Ricardo was alluding now to the relations between the historians that were pre-existing this project, and we can say the same thing in other of the fields that we are interested in. And the second thing which is very, very important is that when you deal with two different systems of public policy in terms of supporting research, it's very important to get to know first how it works in each of the two countries participating. And then you have to make a work of, how would I call it, administrative translation. To make things possible, it's very important to look at what you can get in each country from the public funding agencies. And then it's very important to look at what I would call the complementarities. And one of the important things in this collaboration between Germany and Mexico is the fact that that basically, as Marianne mentioned in her presentation, in Germany, you were coming from those tutorial PhD programs towards group programs, whereas here in Mexico, all of us have, like very well-structured PhD and MA programs. And what we tried to do was to establish a way for those different situations to converge into that graduate college. And I think that it has worked very well. Yeah.
And good morning. And in order to answer to your first question, it's important to know that if we have, due to this balance, we try each year from 10, more or less 10 applications to distribute it between the three institutions. So 3 go to Colegio de Mexico, 3 go to CSS, and 4 for the UNAM.
It's the biggest one.
As long as we can do that. And in the second question, it's important to know that we have made to constitute a group in which we have discussed not only different teams, but we have tried very hard to come into common concepts, which is something very difficult because a sociologist and a historian and a literature and linguistic professional doesn't come to the same words and to the same concepts. So we have tried during all these years to come to this nuclear concept discussion, which has been very fruitful.
Perhaps only to mention that, sorry.
Oh, no, finish.
No, I only want to mention a very small instruments. The DID has this very nice Pro-Almex. ¿Dónde está Alejandra? Pro-Almex. And this project began with a very small funding line, Pro-Almex, but we have to work together, and we have to work with CONACYT and DID. And it was very important, and it was another time. It was 12 years ago, and CONACYT had no interest to work with Germans. But this changed in the last 10 years. So I really appreciate the idea, and there are small instruments to begin this kind of cooperations. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to, my name is Julia Tagüeña, I come from CONACYT. I want to refer to the very, very first question about what happens with the students of this program, because there is one that you just met in the film, that his name is Carlos Perez, and he just won a very important postdoctoral position at Oxford University, because I think that you are training people in a very high level.
I just position to Guadalajara and to Oxford.
Yes, but he's gonna go to Oxford at the moment. I just talked to him. It's a joint program, CONACYT, Oxford.
He plans to come back to Mexico eventually, but this is just a once-in-a-life opportunity. And he competed with many candidates. So you can be sure that you are preparing your people in a very competitive way to really, to win in these places which are very difficult to hold.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to share this with you. And also, obviously, you have to use the windows that exist. For instance, CONACYT has a thematic network program, and you have already created a network, because it's very difficult to invent new programs specifically for you. You will have to go, as you said, you will have to translate and go to the right places. And now that you have all these links, you know how to move among the programs we offer. But congratulations on Carlos' success. I think it's something to share with all of you.
Thank you.
As you talked about the applications, I would be interested in the question, how many students apply for these programs in Germany and here in Latin America? And what are the criteria that you choose the students? You said every university gets a certain ratio. I think the exams are important, the languages. What are the most important criteria?
Okay. On the I began with the German part, and now I'm speaking about the DFG funding, because there are two funding lines. And the DFG funding, we have more or less for our program doing the research, the thesis in Berlin or in Potsdam. We have each 3 years 350 more or less applications, and so we can really choose the best ones of them, and we have 3 criteria. We need a very clear expose. It's very important, because if you have you can't do it in 3 years, and the DFG only is financing 3 years. A very good, very clear expose, and a very clear methodological approach. And the third one is that it could fit in our Interespacios. That has to do with our ideas. Because what we want to do is to develop a research program, but with results, and that they can speak together. So it's difficult to speak between economists and cultural scientists, but if you have more or less the same topic, it's a little bit easier. So.
And you take 10 of these?
No, we 15 doctoral students, 15 each 3 years. No, it's terrible. The election is terrible. Each 3 years, 350. And from them, more or less 180 series. You have to really to discuss it.
Well, okay. In Mexico, it's very different because in Germany, there was a PhD program that was created ex professo, whereas in Mexico, we use already established PhD programs for many reasons. I'm not going to get into details, but among other things, for administrative reasons. So I would say that it depends on the institution. You know, like in El Colegio de Mexico, we, I don't know, there would be something like 8 or 9 graduate programs, MA and PhD programs, participating in the call for applications. At CSAS, how many programs would be participating in the program? 3 or 4, basically PhD programs at CSAS. And at the UNAM, it's humanities and social sciences at the UNAM, and I understand that you visited UNAM yesterday, so you can understand why I cannot give you a precise figure in terms of the number of PhD programs. And then, so we have a call for applications every year for students basically working on the same topics on topics that can be included in the general topic of the International Graduate College. And they have to be sponsored by one of the members of the graduate college. And I would say that we receive around, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 applications every year, and we end up selecting, what's that? It's 6 PhD, 3 MA students, and 1 postdoc student. So it's 10, 11 students every year. Basically, that's how it works.
More comments, more questions?
I have one more question regarding your now future perspectives here. Based on your very positive experience, you described that you have now handed in an application for a new IRTG, and I was wondering, based on your 8 years of experience, what are your lessons learned regarding structural issues? I'm aware that content-wise, you are now looking into temporalities of future in Latin America. You described that, but of course, based on those almost 10 years of working together in a very dynamic international environment, you must also have come to some conclusions regarding structural issues, and I would be interested in some examples you now translate into your new IRTG.
Okay, I begin? Okay, the first is, we mentioned here the 2 colloquia on the 2 sides. It's very important to have a structure for, if you have mobility, the students need a structure. It must not be very, very strong, but very clear. And so we have this colloquium on the both sides, and in Berlin and Potsdam they came each week, or each week they have this colloquium. They came and they present their works, they discuss, and we also ask them how we can help them to find other experts. I'm not a water expert, and we have no water expert, but we have relations to our faculties, and we ask them. And so the same was with cinema, with film. It was the same. We have a very good in cultural studies. We have a very good film colleagues. So we try to link them. That's the first thing. This structure is very important. That you have the structure, the colloquia, and you have colleagues, professors who are really interesting to mentor the thesis, but also to mentor this mobility phase. And that's 2 different things. And so we learned this at the colloquium, and I really appreciate that the Mexican colleagues, and I understood that that's very invention of the program, and we will continue with this, is the interinstitutional colloquium. Later on, my colleagues can mention it. So this is very important, the structure, to combine mobility with research. And this, I think, is the first point. The second is that you need certain kinds of laboratory to think about new things. And we had we have workshops to discuss theoretical topics. Lucille and Elena mentioned it's not easy to, but now we have some concepts how to study entre espacios, in between spaces. There are a long discussion about the post-colonial theorists, but how to do it in an empirical way, it's different. So we have now some concept, and we will have a very nice publication soon where we will explain this. One is liminality, one is chronology. We have different, and there we saw there is a link between our research group now and with the future, with the topic of future. There is a link, so it's not so artificial to have now a new topic. It's new, but we can relate it to our results from the first from this project. Yeah, perhaps that's later we can profound this. Structure.
Thank you for that question. I want to foster still the quality of in between, because we will think on time, and time is a category that travels in between disciplines. So academia is structured in a very, I think, strategic, productive way, which is terrains, disciplines. And on the one hand, we favor history and we favor some kind of disciplines, but on the other, we are trying to really produce thinking and also actions that are located in this in
in-between space. So the challenge now is learn from the a lot of obstacles and challenges we had for the tutors thinking together in concepts that travel along disciplines and that are not stagnated in the territorial disciplinary academic thinking. So we want to think along academia, but also we want to think not against, but fostering radical thinking in the margins and in the interstitial methodologies. So a big lesson we learned is that tutors and professors need to really challenge their own disciplines, their own convictions, and try to travel to the margins and to travel to this and to construct bridges in between conceptual thinking, but also in between action, no? and the actions that will take academic thinking to do things. No? And you do a lot of things around time. No? Thinking on time is really productive. So we want to learn to work with the disciplines in the economy of a disciplinary thinking, but really fostering interdisciplinary thinking along time categories.
Teresa, do you want to say something? Teresa, and Arturo. Teresa.
I liked the question on what we have learned from this almost 10 years experience. And truth is, we have learned a lot, I think. What are the bases required for this success, if I may call it that way? Because graduation rates have been good indeed, if I may emphasize, and we are very proud of that, because graduation is always an issue. So I think we have put into this project what Jean-Francois mentioned, pre-existing relationships between institution and individuals. And I think there's nothing to be embarrassed about that, because it provided a very solid base for what has been and still is a quite demanding experience, and it takes up a lot of our everyday time. So we have put in goodwill, solid academic specialization from the part of the senior scholars, because we think that's the only way in which you can create a common field of interdisciplinarity, when everyone is certain of his or her own starting points and boundaries of concern in terms of discipline and the like. And we have also put in a lot of intercultural tolerance. It also has to be said, there are some apparently menial things that, for instance, for me, for example, who I am very, very stuck to my schedule of meals, I find normally that I have just finished breakfast when we are in Germany, that we are starting lunch. So I cannot practically have lunch. And then at 4 o'clock, at 4:30, when we are well into a working session, I feel I'm starving. And so there are many things like that, I mean, there have been so little difficulties that we are practically amazed. You were asking, for example, about the relative distribution of scholarships between the institutions. There hasn't been much argument about that, truly, because it depends on the applications that we have, and we have always managed a sort of equal or reasonably equal distribution. And that's why, not only because the future in Latin America and in this world is a really compelling issue, an urgent issue, but also because of the positive experience that we have had, that we are certain that we can offer for the future in this project about the future, well, some useful experiences for other institutions in both countries. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Arturo.
Yes, it is quite clear to me that you have had an impact upon mobility, students finishing their dissertations, interinstitutional action, interdisciplinary discussions, theoretical issues, etc. However, I would like to ask if you have had, and if it is contemplated in the project, to have some impact outside of the institutions, that is, social impact, and how could you measure that for the project?
Okay, Kin wants to begin?
Who's taking it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that question. What we have in our program and also in this category of interdisciplinary are all these new ways of studying social problems, which is queer studies, gender studies, human rights studies, all these little studies that are an effect of this thinking outside the box. And the box is academia, and there are a lot of students, a lot of perspective, beginning with gender perspective and others, that we actually, in a very productive way, learn how to recollect, no? To recruit. So some of our students, and I would say a considerable number, are very much related to human rights, to issues on disappearance. No? A lot of, we have been dealing with how to appear in academia, how to appear in a different way in the classroom, how to appear in a different way in these borders that mark activism. And we created this concept that is theoretical activism. So how to activate knowledge. And these kind of programs are really, really productive, not only to recruit students to academic thinking, because we are trying to think a little bit outside the box, not that much, but a little bit outside the box. So what we have is students that tend to live and appear in these borders. So human rights, gender, equality, sexuality, and of course, big issue around migration, all the problems, all the extreme pain we are suffering along these themes of migration and violence. So we really, I think we have an impact on creation of collectives, on NGOs, on human rights agencies, and themes around violence, equality, and migration, not only in academia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, Arturo, in terms of measuring the impact, well, it's not easy. And basically, you can measure the impact through traditional indicators, the one that we're used to use in the academic world. So it's, like number of students who graduated from the program, publications, and so on and so forth. But then we tried to do a little bit more. There was that documentary film that you saw, a small part of it during the presentation. So I guess that it's one way to try to reach out outside of our academic world. There is another thing that I think is important, and we all see it from different points of view, but interdisciplinarity. I think that we're living, especially now in social sciences, we are living in a world which is tending all the time towards more specialization, even within our own disciplines. So I think it's very important to try to, I think that this experience has been very important in terms of interdisciplinarity. And I think that we're going a little bit against the current when we're doing that. And finally, again, I would like to stress the fact that I think that we have, in a certain way, in a very modest way, contributed to the academic collaboration and cooperation between Mexico and Germany. In our small field, I think that what we've done has helped to increase the academic collaboration between Mexico and Germany. And I'm not just talking in terms of MOUs and all that, but also I'm thinking in terms of the way in which we try to collaborate between the two countries. And we have a big challenge, and it's a challenge that we are facing actually, which is the how to open the project. I mean, because the way it is structured, it works around, like two nucleus of researchers. And these are, like relatively limited nucleus of researchers. So we are now thinking in terms of circulation of researchers, renewable researchers, new generations, younger people, and to find a way to be a little bit more flexible in terms of the participation of researchers who are not directly involved into the main nucleus of the project. So that would be what I can say about trying to be self-critical. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So if there is no any comment and question more, so we have now coffee break. And okay, sorry, Carlos. Sorry.
Now we have some minutes for a thematic coffee session. We will divide in 5 thematic spaces here: international relations and political science, sociology, economy and finance, energy and environment, and linguistic and literature. Then we can go to take a coffee, and during this time we prepared 5 spaces here.
Perhaps we can, the Mexican colleagues can, here is literature, Lucelina, who is from sociology. ¿Dónde está Arturo? Sociology? Ah, okay, so, okay, first coffee, okay. And later on we will, okay. So, thank you very much.
Que esta mujer dijo que nos va a dividir en 5 grupos para aquí, que nosotros tenemos que no sé cómo está pensado, porque eso lo pensó Laura Flamand. Eso lo pensó Laura Flamand, no sé decir cómo lo van a...
Entonces no se puede uno dar a la fuga.
please, if you can kindly start going to your... If you can start going to your table, please, and just... no? No, es que sí, para que bajen un poco la voz, porque ahí está.
It seems so that I'm the most authoritarian. Entonces ya todo está distribuido, no se pueden decidir.
Sí, es una sugerencia.
Sí, 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 sí. Sí, sí. Bueno. Ya puedes. Es que no quiero que los alemanes sean los autoritarios.